Kia ora, welcome to the Amateur Austenite. I'm Frances Duncan, author, Austenite life coach. I'm joined by my lovely co-host Rachel Pilbar, book buyer, Austenite, and all-round nerd.
Hi!
Today we're discussing chapter 10 of Sense and Sensibility. They've just met Willoughby. He turns up the next day and then is basically there all the time. And they're super into each other almost immediately. Eleanor discovers that Colonel Brandon is actually into Marianne and kind of indicates that perhaps he wasn't when Mrs. Jennings was saying it before, but he is now. And Willoughby says some shitty stuff about Colonel Brandon.
Yeah, this is the chapter of Marianne and Willoughby falling in love, which for viewers who are listening, because we're not recording this videoly, I'm using air quotes. He sucks. I say falling in love in quotes because I can't trust that he is actually genuinely falling in love with Marianne, or if he's just faking it because he thinks he's going to get something out of it.
He does seem to agree with her on everything in this chapter. Anything she says, he's like, yes, exactly.
And anytime he says something that she disagrees with, she was able to persuade him to her way of thinking. No, that doesn't sound genuine.
It starts off talking about how he's learnt about their family, their sensible, elegant, mutual affection, domestic comfort, and their personal charms of the entire family. But the thing that bothers me is at this point, he's quite happy to destroy this family by his selfish behaviour. Just had a list of how wonderful they are, and he's learnt this, but we know that at this point, he definitely has no actual good intentions. He's like, I'm just going to kill some time while I'm here.
He knows from literally the first time he meets Marianne and drops her home that these aren't people with much money. He also knows he has no funds. You know you can't provide a good life for her, but you're making it seem like you can.
He's also 25 and she's 17. This is normal. Much larger age gaps are normal at this period. But as we know, at 25, your brain is fully matured.
Yeah, but this is Willoughby, so I doubt that.
I'm just saying there shouldn't be any excuse for his behaviour.
No.
He's old enough to know better. We've got to consider that Marianne's never really been out in the world. She is 17.
Yeah.
So she must have only just come out and has only ever been at Norland and now Barton.
Yeah, she's an incredibly naive person. And most of what she knows from the world is things she probably would have read in books. And that's where she would have a lot of her romantic ideals and notions from. So when she first meets Willoughby in chapter 9 and he rescues her because she's hurt herself and carries her home, genuinely, that is a good meet cute.
Oh yeah, she's had a meet cute.
Yeah.
She's got the romance of this novel.
That is actually a really kind of cute and romantic way to meet someone. And so, you know, she's 17. She's like, I just had the most romantic experience of anybody's life ever, and I'm going to marry that man. Like, and then he keeps coming back to see her every single day. And first he's like, oh, I'm just checking in to see how she is because she was hurt. And then eventually she's fine. And he's like, I just wanted to say hi. What else is she going to think? That is romantic. That's romance.
And she gets the romantic description of her beauty as well.
Yes, that's true.
Though Austen still manages to make a joke about it. Basically, she's so lovely that when she's called beautiful, Truth is less violently outraged than usually happens. What a roundabout way to say that she's actually beautiful.
The way that Austen sometimes just describes people's skin, I'm like, this sounds like you want to be taking it off and wearing it. Her skin was very brown, but from its transparency, her complexion was uncommonly brilliant. I'm like, just sounds like you want to eat it, which is what we thought about Mr. Elton when we did Emma.
Jane Austen wants to wear Marianne's skin.
Hey, hot take. Hot take. This is my take. Jane Austen is writing characters whose skin she wants to be inside.
At the start, though, Marianne holds back. Not exactly trying to be proper, but she's embarrassed because he picked her up and carried her, and that's a little close. But that changes so quickly. He charms her, and she's got that eagerness. Eager is a word that's used to describe her really often in this novel.
Yeah.
He loves music and dancing just like she does, and she gives him this look of approbation to say, yes, you, that wonderful. She's given him the feedback that he needs to know what to say to engage her. And it says it's only necessary to mention her favourite amusement to engage her to talk. Exactly what he did. And it turns out that they agree on everything. And she wanted a guy that agrees with her on everything, but does he really, or is he just saying that?
Is he just saying that? We eventually get to learn the inner workings of some of these characters' minds and their intentions. Marianne meeting Willoughby, how is she supposed to know what his intentions are or who he actually is? She can't go to Facebook and stalk him or check his Instagram history and see what he's been up to. She has to take his word for what he's saying. But then the other person who I think is at fault is Sir John, because anytime he's asked about Willoughby, he's saying, oh yeah, he's as good a bloke as any. How well does Sir John actually know Willoughby? Because he's vouching for him to people who trust him, who he's been very kind and lovely to. These women took a lot of trust and faith that you would provide a home, and you did, and you've smashed it. So you've set yourself as the highest form of trust in this situation, because you have, and you followed through, and that's well deserved. But then you vouch for this guy. Do you know him very well, or are you just saying that? This is someone we trust saying he's a good bloke. This is the background check we're getting.
If we're going back to social media, we only know about people from social media what they portray.
Yeah.
And that's the same here. Sir John only knows what Willoughby portrays. And the Dashwoods only know what Willoughby portrays. And unfortunately, can you ever really know someone? Yeah. Particularly in this society where politeness means that you keep a lot of things internal.
Mm-hmm. If you're only meeting people at like community events, balls, say you're an aggressive and abusive person, that's almost always going to be happening behind closed doors. The public and just general acquaintance isn't going to see that.
Whichever society you're in.
Yeah.
He works fast, though, so much so that Eleanor is poking fun at Marianne after his first visit because they're conversing like long-established acquaintance. She jests, "You'll have exhausted every favourite topic. He only has to talk about the picturesque and second marriages, and then you've talked about absolutely everything." And it takes a while for Marianne to realise that she was joking.
Yes, she gets a bit upset until their mother comes in saying she was only jesting. That is also very just Marianne in character of just taking things too seriously in that respect. She's very defensive of her opinions and anything about her.
And this guy's perfect. They read, they talked, they sang together. His musical talents were considerable, and he read with all the sensibility and spirit which Edward had wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how painful it was for her? And Austen says he was exactly formed to engage Marianne's heart, which makes it sound like he is intentionally doing this, perhaps.
I mean, she's essentially creating her own ideal young man because he is just being a yes man. He's just agreeing with everything. What she wants in a man is someone who is identical to her in every way because she wants them to conform to all of her opinions. And so she's falling in love with basically a version of herself.
Marianne dated a woman.
Yeah, because she's just like, oh, he agrees with everything I'm saying. That's perfect. You're perfect and beautiful and I love you because you agree with me.
They are a bad influence on each other because one way that they're similar, he displayed a want of caution and he tended to say too much what he thought on every occasion without attention to persons or circumstances. And that's something the two of them do.
And again, identical. Marianne just wants to date herself, including the insensibility.
But Austen's joking about it as well. Marianne previously was like, I will never meet a man who is good enough for me, who will meet my ideas of perfection. But here he is.
He's right there because you made him.
And before the end of a week, Mrs. Dashwood assumes that they're going to be married.
Which is crazy. My daughter only met this man like a week ago. They're going to be married. I'm just going to call it now. And I'm like, girl, maybe feel him out for a bit longer before you place your bets. Everything does happen quicker in this time.
We get the impression that people marry on very slight acquaintance. They're talking about the picturesque because Marianne has particular views about what is picturesque, and Edward says to her, I like things to be clean and tidy. I get that you like things to be unusual. I just like it to look nice rather than picturesque. And this is something Austen talks about in multiple of her novels. Lizzie uses it as a joke when she's at Netherfield to say, oh, you're too picturesque in a 3, so I will run off. So you're not in a 4. And Catherine learns about it from the Tilneys in Northanger Abbey and says that Bath isn't worth painting because it's not picturesque. So this is the sort of movement that Marianne is into, the very romantic beauty of things. Remember we were talking about the cottage, that it's not ramshackle enough, and that's probably Marianne's thoughts.
Yes, because she finds beauty in the kind of strange.
Willoughby is this perfect guy. He's handsome and he matches all her things. Should she not prefer someone who's a little odd?
Yeah.
It's more picturesque.
Someone say like Colonel Brandon has a picturesque kind of beauty about him. I think we're quite picturesque, friend.
We are. We're absolutely gorgeous.
Just coming back to this this little argument, well, not argument, but Eleanor poking fun at Marianne and Marianne defending herself. And she's actually not really listened to anything that Eleanor has actually said. She's making up the objections. Eleanor is saying, oh, you know what he thinks about all these poets, and oh, you guys have talked about every topic, there'll be nothing left to learn about him. Marianne is just being like, I've been too much at my ease. I'm too happy, too frank. You're telling me that I'm not being good or I'm not being an appropriate lady and you're attacking me. Another really good example of Marianne's character. She's not actually really listening to what anyone around her is saying. She's just hearing what she wants to hear, which again is why Willoughby can so easily manipulate her. But it's why when people try and warn her, she just doesn't listen to anything they say. Because she's just like, you have said one thing against me, regardless of what it was, and you're attacking me.
You disagree with me? You're attacking me?
Yeah. Was there any hope for Marianne avoiding this situation?
We do need to remember she's 17, and this is pretty accurate. I'm sorry for any 17-year-olds listening, but yeah, when people would say things that were different to what I believed at that age, I would get very upset. These days, I'd just be like, well, you're wrong, but anyway.
You're wrong and I'm walking away.
Exactly. I'm less likely to get my back up about it. I'd be like, walk away.
Yeah, that's fair.
The whole second half of the chapter is about Colonel Brandon. So Eleanor now perceives Colonel Brandon's attraction to Marianne, which suggests that potentially he did not actually have it before, but it has developed now. The attention and wit of the others were drawn off to make fun of Willoughby and Marianne, which makes it sound like they only care about a laugh and not people's real feelings.
Oh, I definitely don't think they care about anybody else's feelings but their own. And by their own, I mean only Marianne's feelings.
Eleanor is now realising that Mrs. Jennings said this earlier. She assigned these feelings to Colonel Brandon for her own satisfaction. But now she can see Colonel Brandon watching Willoughby and Marianne. Eleanor can see it herself.
I don't think it's so much that it wasn't there before, but maybe it was just like, you know, you and me don't really have crushes and feelings for people the same way that a lot of other people do, but you might see someone on the street and be like, wow, I've kind of got a little crush on them because they're so cute. I feel like maybe that's how Brandon first saw Marianne, was like, wow, she's so beautiful. And all of his friends picked up on, he's got the hots for her. And then eventually, once that passed, they were just like, now this other hot guy's come along and they obviously have this chemistry. But by this point, now Brandon does have genuine emotion towards Marianne. Don't understand why, bro. You could do better.
He likes that she's eager and excited and musical and reminds him of his lost love. But he's actually had time to develop those feelings for her. It wasn't an initial thing. We've kind of read into the novel that it was, but here it's saying that, no, it wasn't there initially. It's there now. So he's had time to develop that stuff. Maybe Mrs. Jennings does really know him and went, this is exactly your sort of girl.
Yeah, that's true.
Colonel Brandon's a real hero, though. Willoughby, surface level hero. Handsome, charming, all of that. But Colonel Brandon is an ex-military man. He is wounded both physically and emotionally. And Sir John kind of drops hints about his past and him being an unfortunate man. His reserve is the oppression of his spirits rather than he's just a bit grumpy in general. This should excite Marianne's interest, but because she's so enamoured with the hot young guy, she's not noticing the real, true romantic hero that's in their midst. And Willoughby is a dick about him. Everybody speaks well of him, but nobody actually cares about him. We're delighted to see him, but nobody actually remembers to talk to him.
Which is really sad.
Rude thing to say about somebody.
I think Willoughby can see Brandon's feelings. He is so wrapped up in Marianne, paying attention to her, and he knows he's secured Marianne's affections. But he's probably heard people say, like, oh, Brandon likes Marianne. And so he's kind of going to be extra mean about it just to spite the guy for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. No reason.
Yeah.
He comes up with a ridiculous reason for disliking Colonel Brandon. 3 unanswerable reasons. He threatened me with rain when I wanted it to be fine. He's found fault with the hanging of my curricle and I cannot persuade him to buy my brown mare. Like, what? That's not a reason to dislike somebody. And you kind of got to wonder whether he knew that Eliza was Colonel Brandon's foster daughter or not. That's, I don't think, ever explained whether he did.
I think it wouldn't surprise me if he did. If she had mentioned Colonel Brandon by name, and then when he finally meets this guy, Colonel Brandon, he's like, oh, it's this guy.
I'm sure he must have known him from being at Barton before.
Probably. It would make sense. But Brandon doesn't really say much on Willoughby or having a previous acquaintance with Willoughby.
Miss Willoughby wants the privilege of disliking Colonel Brandon without interference. He makes fun of the information that the Colonel has from the East Indies. Marianne's like, I bet he said it's hot and the mosquitoes are annoying. And Willoughby's like, oh, maybe he talked about nabobs and all this sort of thing. I wonder if part of it is actually jealousy as well, because Colonel Brandon has travelled. He has been places. He's done things. And Willoughby specifically points out that he has more money than he can spend.
He's jealous of his money, jealous of his experience.
Potentially. Eleanor suggests that since they don't like Lady Middleton and Mrs. Jennings, and those people like Colonel Brandon, perhaps the fact that Marianne and Willoughby talk shit about Colonel Brandon is, in its a roundabout way, praise. Because Willoughby says who would submit to the indignity of being approved by Lady Middleton and Mrs. Jennings. Who could command the indifference of anybody else?
Just because these 2 insufferable women like him, I think it says more for his character that he puts up with it, or at least acknowledges it, because he's a nice guy. He's polite.
They say nice things about Willoughby too.
Yeah, that's true. They're very congratulatory of Willoughby and Marianne. Like, at what point is anyone saying something good about Brandon okay to them? And it's almost like there isn't. Like, then they make fun of Eleanor for saying nice things about him.
What if Eleanor had not met Edward?
Yeah.
Colonel Brandon seems like the type of guy that she might like. She said he's seen a great deal of the world and he's read a lot. He thinks. He gives me good information. He is good-natured. I know that he thinks about things. I know that he cares about people, and he has sense, which will always have attractions for me. Even if he is 34 Marianne, the way that's put in there is like you can tell that Marianne opens her mouth and Eleanor's jumping on it before she says anything.
Yeah, she's like, shut up, you dumbass. I do kind of like the thought of Eleanor and Colonel Brandon as a couple. They would be a good match. Maybe more so than Edward, but it's just happened who met who first.
I think potentially if Marianne had died and Edward had married Lucy, maybe they would have married and consoled each other. I don't know. There is one fantastic line which I intend to make a t-shirt out of. You are endeavouring to disarm me by reason and to convince me against my will. This is Willoughby saying, no, don't try to tell me he's a good guy. I just want to dislike him, okay? Don't give me logic.
I mean, I do get that. A little bit.
Yeah, I tell people off when they give me logical reasons for things.
I'm like, no, shut up. Don't want to like that thing. But also, normally I have a better reason to dislike it than he threatened me with rain when I wanted sunshine. Bro.
Why do you reckon Willoughby actually dislikes Brandon?
Because he's a dick.
Willoughby, that is.
Willoughby's a dick. Mic drop.
I feel like that's a good place to end. And that's our discussion of Chapter 10 of Sense and Sensibility. I've been Frances Duncan. This has been Rachel Pua.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and we wish you happy reading.